All right, this video is extremely long overdue. I am doing something that, well, obviously should have been done a while ago. I am restructuring and rebalancing sort of my portfolio, especially within the Robinhood investing application. After a while, you don't keep tabs on your investments as close as you should be. You get to a position where you are maybe invested in a lot of ways that you don't want to be. So for me, in particular, I had invested in a bunch of different stocks, not really large positions. It was just kind of killing my portfolio from a standpoint of being over-diversified. So I wanted to hone it back in and really push forward with the strategy that I'm going to feel confident with here in the future. So I've started the restructuring process. I'm not quite finished with it yet, but I want to talk about my thought process, why I'm making some tweaks to the way I'm investing, and maybe, just share my insight with anybody who's checking out this video. Now, the other thing is I started off this channel kind of as a dividend investor, and that is still my very favorite type of investing. Now, a lot of people say that you shift towards dividends towards retirement age when you're getting a little bit older and when you're looking for steady cash flow. And so that is, yes, still part of my strategy, but right now my portfolio is skewing more towards growth. And yeah, I'll just talk about what some of that's going to look like in the future. I always love to start these videos looking at my Roth IRA because this is what I think is most important account for any investor out there. Just the tax advantages that you have from it. And I think when you're just starting investing, you don't actually know what a Roth IRA and the power of what it does and how impactful it is. But basically being able to grow your money tax-free in the stock market is such an absolute cheat code that they've literally put restrictions on being too rich and being able to use an account like this. So just know that this is a fantastic place to start. Now, in my Roth IRA, I actually didn't change anything in here. 2 different investments, 2 different ETFs, SCHD, because I love dividend investing, and there are tons of mixed messages that I'm getting from people on SCHD. The thoughts out there are forever changing, I feel like, but more recently, what happened with SCHD is that they went through a restructuring period, and so a lot of the initial investments that people started investing in SCHD for are no longer part of the fund. They've switched around some criteria for it, so things are kind of up in the air, and the return that people are seeing, well, they don't love it, right? Because if you look at what's going on over the past year, now keep in mind this doesn't factor the dividend payments, but if you look at it, it's down about 2.96%. Now, if I go into something like VTI, where it's tracing the overall market over the past year, it's up nearly 15.58%, and there is a huge discrepancy between the two. Now, my thing is, as somebody who loves dividend investing, I still want to have stuff like that as part of my portfolio. Is SCHD the best fund for that at this point? Well, I feel like I should do a deeper dive video on that and figure out whether or not I want to continue with it. But for now, it's been a stable part of my investment journey, and I've just kept it in my portfolio. The other thing is, every single investment that I make, I am trying to outpace my Roth IRA. More specifically, though, I'm trying to outpace VTI or the total stock market in general. So if I'm not getting a 15.58% return, and if you look at like the 5 years, right, 93% on this, you probably are doing something wrong. And if, in my case, if I'm not getting similar returns and if it's quite significantly lower, that is a huge hiccup and it can kill your portfolio over time. So what I try to do is, with any of the investments and the strategies that I do on the side, if I am not going to be outpacing the market or it's not really working out, it is not worth the risk. I work far too hard for the money that I've made to just be throwing it away. And like, people love getting creative. They love talking about individual stocks. And honestly, those types of videos do extremely well here on YouTube. People want to hear the glorification of picking an individual stock or picking solo stocks that just explode and skyrocket your wealth building. And, it's a lot harder than most people think when joining and starting to invest for the first time. Just get burnt a couple times and you'll realize, like, you got to be a little bit more cautious with this stuff and you want to make the right investments. So I guess the main question then is, how am I restructuring my portfolio? Like, what's going on with my thought process here? And it doesn't have to do with my Roth IRA. I think that's always going to be my stable account that I'm actively trying to beat. And it's also going to be the account that I lean back on. I've done the math with this portfolio. I'm projected to retire a multi-millionaire if I just follow suit for the next 30 plus years. And that's exactly what I plan to do with that portfolio. So I'm kind of locked in retirement at that point. Now, the other account that I have in Robinhood, and Robinhood actually sparked sort of the restructuring that I want to do because of some great features they've added. This is my regular taxable brokerage account within Robinhood Investing. And I got to a point where I was investing again in just so many different individual companies that I basically created a super diversified ETF of my own pickings, and I just wasn't consistently investing enough in each one of those companies for it to make a significant impact on my portfolio. I had some that had bad returns, I had some that had good returns, and so what I decided to do was sell off the ones that had bad returns to unlock that capital to invest in different ways. I'll talk about that here in a second, but Robinhood has this really cool feature where you can see your profit and losses. And so basically what I wanted to do was counter them and have, not a lot of tax implications on it. So you can see the past month, I've recognized a loss of $69.47 and year to date $144.27. Now, some of this I capitalized on selling at $600 profit, and I sold some at maybe losing $800 or something like that. And so I balanced it out to get roughly around $0. I mean, $70 is what I've lost here, which is not going to be, anything I stress over. So what am I doing now? Well, a lot of people are always emphasizing how important it is to go after growth when you're at a young age. That's probably the biggest knock I get on a lot of my investment strategies that I do. And well, first off, I want to say, if people like random people online are telling you how to invest, like you're already investing your money, you got to find a way that you are comfortable doing it. Now, again, I mentioned earlier in this video, I feel like I've worked far too hard to accumulate some of the money that I do have. I don't want to see that go negative, and I don't want to be super volatile. I don't know about you guys, but I've gone through a ton of the different meme stock, eras where things absolutely exploded. People are telling you to go do one thing. And then I've gone through the COVID crash where people were like, sell everything, don't invest, and it bounces back super quick. Like, volatility on the stock market isn't really my friend. I feel a little bit uncertain. That's why I love things like SCHD. I love dividend income that you can receive and just the stability that things like that offer. I'm okay not getting the most insane returns, and that's just my investor profile. I don't expect everybody to be okay with that. However, I've decided to get a little bit more, risky with the investments that I'm making, especially being young, and I can go back and restructure this later in the future. Now, one of the main investments that I've, started doing more recently is getting a little bit heavier into Bitcoin. You can see that I'm up about 30% on Bitcoin, and literally the strategy is just invest $100 weekly into Bitcoin. No matter what's going on, I treat it like any of the other investments that I have. Love dollar cost averaging. That's what I'm going to do with something like Bitcoin. And I've actually added a very large holding for this particular portfolio in QQQ. This is the biggest change. I previously didn't really have all that much invested. You can see from what I had before, it's up about 12%, $914. And over the past year, if you compare that, to the 16% VTI returns, this is up 21.5. If you look at the 5 years, it's up over 115%. And the reason being is, well, you can scroll down, it is very heavily weighted in tech. Now, 54% of this ETF is directly in technology. You can see the top 10 holdings: NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, Broadcom, Amazon, Meta, so on and so forth. I love this just because of the exposure that I have into these different investments. Like NVIDIA's absolutely cranked. All this stuff is really, really cool to see, and I just have a little bit more exposure into it now. It is actually the largest holding in this individual portfolio. One of my all-time favorite investments as well has been Apple. So I said, don't necessarily have to pick individual stocks. There's still some that I really believe in and companies that I want to be investing in. And one of them is, yes, Robinhood. Robinhood, I also have about $3,400 invested in, but this is another one where I've set up recurring investments. Now, I had done more of a lump sum investment the other day when I was restructuring. So this is a little bit skewed. My average cost used to be, I think, less than $90 at one point. And I had invested in them when they went public and then sold them for a little bit of a loss. But if you look at their chart, it's just insane. Over the past 5 years, which they haven't even been on the stock market that long, up 220%. But look at this, over the past year, 440%. Not saying it's a great time to, invest in Robinhood or anything like that. And I don't want you copying exactly what I'm doing. This is something that is really eye-opening to me. I'm kind of kicking myself in the back as to, hindsight's always 20/20 with this stuff. But for Robinhood, I mean, if you look at my channel in general, pretty much every video I'm using Robinhood investing, I'm talking about it, I'm getting people signing up for Robinhood. I think it's a fantastic brokerage, and I think they've really done so well for the finance community and the features that they offer. Now, coming down the line, they're doing things like trying to tokenize freaking private companies, and they're offering all of these different features. I just got access to the Robinhood Gold Card. Man, that was quite a saga. If you want to check out more on that, I got a video here that you can go and look at. But anyways, like, I just think that they're opening up the revenue model just significantly with what they're doing, and they're continuing to try to break down the barrier. When it comes to private equity, they're trying to offer private equity funds. So I am very bullish on what that could potentially turn into. And again, like, they don't sponsor these videos or anything like that. It's just a company that I have wholeheartedly kind of like chased and followed and believed in, and never really put my money where my mouth is. So that's just something interesting. Sorry for the little off-topic spiel, but that's another one where I decided, hey, I'm going to do this little experiment, and I am also going to be investing $100 every single week into. So that's just one that I want to continue with in the future. Now, these are other investments that I was up on that I didn't quite want to sell that I also like having in my portfolio. Microsoft, AbbVie. I think AbbVie, I'm up like 52% on this. Haven't been holding it all that long either. Meta, Amazon, Google. So they're all just like, again, tech. I'm going more into the tech heavy stuff aside from AbbVie there. And there might be some other individual stocks that I add to the list here in the future, but for the most part, I'm really not going heavy into these individual stocks, individual companies, because I feel comfortable structuring this in a way where I've been more hands-off investing. Okay, now with Robinhood, there's also a new really cool feature. They've added sub-accounts, and you can see at the top, I have one called Purchases. Now, I'm currently in the process of transferring funds from external brokerages into this. I started a challenge on my channel where, well, actually, it was kind of similar to what I'm talking about with Robinhood and kind of kicking myself in the butt for. I want to put my money where my mouth is when I'm spending and using companies and using them over and over again. So I started a challenge on my channel. Actually, I'll put the kickoff video right here. This is basically just every single dollar I spend on non-necessities, I'm going to go ahead and invest the same amount directly into the company itself. So, for example, if I bought, new Nike cleats, I started a flag football league. I'm like, just spitballing here, but I would go and invest in Nike stock. That is the biggest thing that I think I've missed out on with a lot of the different investments that I've made in the past, like using Microsoft products, buying Xboxes, the games, things like that for it. And had I invested money, like when I started doing this and consciously was saving a little bit more to do that too, I would be so much more well off than I'm at in this current moment. So again, I'm not super far with the challenge at all. I'm not even sure what those results are going to look like. I thought it would just be really cool to start charting something like that. And then, a couple years down the line, look back at the returns and what that looks like. Now, again, this is super fresh. If I even go to the year, you can see I just started transferring these funds back over. And over the past week is when I started, just a few days ago. So there's really not much progress right now to report within the application, but give it a few days. I'll have a couple $1,000s in here. Every month, my spending habits have been changing a little bit. I'm trying to save a little bit more money and spend less. This challenge has been really instrumental in that. So definitely check that out if you're interested in something like that to see how the returns are. And it's just gonna be really cool. And so basically my end goal for my Robinhood account is to have a few different setups. One is going to be my taxable brokerage account that is going to focus on, I guess, like the ETFs that I'm investing in and how I think that it's really helpful to start investing, especially as a beginner, and just sort of making smart decisions, right? So that's going to be one safe portfolio that I have. I guess I'll call it like my safe portfolio. Then I want to also create another portfolio that is going to be the spending challenge. I'd call that more of a growth portfolio. And I think, comparing that to what my Roth IRA does, what my safe portfolio is doing. And then on top of that, I think just creating that, extra growth portfolio where it's some of the individual picks that I really kind of believe in and want to be investing in would be cool. And then just one last one where I can go after the love of my life, dividend investing, and just like build a little portfolio there, have it all organized. And then it's basically just a game competing against each other to see what I can get the best returns on, have it all super organized in one app. And that's kind of the biggest struggle. I've used so many different applications, and now I feel like I can bring it all back home into what my favorite has been. And so that's what I'm going to do. Anyways, guys, if you have any questions on this video, make sure you leave a comment down below. A little bit long-winded on this one. Hopefully cleared up some of the thoughts around some of the investments that I have been making. I've got a ton to report on here in the future, especially as funds come into here. I've been hustling and grinding. I'm trying to get this account value up to over 100K. It's at $74,000 right now by the end of the year. Once some of these transfers go through, again, I've been trying to up my savings and everything. We'll see if we can get there. Thank you guys for checking out this video. Make sure you subscribe, stick around, and have a great day.